My name is Seth Evans, and I'm a member of the leadership team of Elders Climate Action Massachusetts, and I'll be your facilitator today. We're here because of our concern for the climate crisis, which is already creating danger for much of the world's population, and which we see as every bit as big a threat in the not too distant future, both to our Commonwealth and to the citizens and future generations here, as the pandemic that we're experiencing now. More specifically, we're here to boost the passage of the 2050 RoadMap bill, a bill we feel is the clearest passage to, clearest route to meaningful climate legislation needed to prevent this crisis from escalating during this legislative session. Going down a little further, I want to just say that the RoadMap bill was reported out favorably by the NREC committee in July of last year, now sits in House Ways and Means Committee, and it needs passage there to make it onto the House floor for a vote. We understand there's a logjam in the legislature due to the pandemic, schools, budgets, other competing legislation. But this rally was set up to seek to influence the legislative process by showing the depth and the breadth of the support for the RoadMap bill at this critical time. So without further ado, I'm deeply honored to introduce Representative Joan Moschino, the author of the 2050 RoadMap bill. Joan, thank you for being here today, and thank you for explaining about the bill. Many of us know a lot about it, but we are always delighted to hear you speak about it. You're the world's expert.
Thank you so much. So I am State Representative Joan Moschino, representing the 3rd Plymouth District, which is Hingham, Hull, Cohasset, and North Scituate, all beautiful coastal communities. So I don't think it's a surprise to anyone here my deep-rooted interest in environmental health, climate change, sea level rise, and the global climate crisis. What I thought I would do today is walk you through the bill and set a little of the context and then talk a little bit about where we're at. Before I begin, I would just like to take a moment to thank Elders Climate Action and all of the of our partners in our coalition for support for this bill. But Elders Climate Action in particular has been just a terrific partner. They have been steadfast advocates across the whole 2 years we've been working on this bill. And just as a group, you are wonderful stewards of the environment. And it has absolutely been a pleasure and a delight to work with you. And I really look forward to getting this bill across the goal line here, and we really do have you and all of the other environmental groups who've come behind us and support to thank for the success in really elevating these issues, elevating this bill. And once we get this done, I look forward to the next pieces that we'll work on together. And I'm grateful for the opportunity always to speak on this bill, which is very important to me and has a lot of meaning to my district in particular, because we will be the first climate refugees in Hull. So we're all well aware of the climate crisis. The issues present as public health, public safety, environmental justice, environmental health, social justice. However, the solution is an economic one. It is the decarbonization of our economy. And if we're going to accomplish those goals, then we need a plan. And that is why I filed this bill. I filed the 2050 RoadMap because we need a plan to achieve our goals. House 3983 is the critical updates to the Global Warming Solutions Act. And I said, if you go to the next slide, I'm going to present the context to you and then walk you through the bill. So the GWSA is from 2008. That is when Massachusetts made the commitment to reduce its statewide carbon emissions. And in fact, the GWSA is a really great piece of legislation. The initial goal was 80% of the 1990 greenhouse gas emission levels. And you always hear us talk about the 80 by 50 plan that they were putting in place for the first 10 years. It created a framework which mandated that EEA coordinate the efforts to achieve those goals. If you could go to the next slide, please. And in fact, the GWSA implementation over the past 10 years has been focused on energy, on greening the grid. And that has led to a number of really tremendous initiatives, which we all know very well. It's the Clean Energy Standards, it's the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiatives called RGGI, RPS, it's procuring hydroelectric and wind, it's the work we've done to date in the electric vehicle sector, and it's also included and sort of broadened into the building sector as well. And so we have the green stretch codes, we have the Green Communities Act, which our municipalities have availed themselves of, all the tremendous grant opportunities and made those commitments at the local level. It's also included resilience work. And if you remember last session, we passed the Environmental Bond Bill, $2.1 billion around resiliency, adaptation, but it also took those first steps into mitigation, which was very important. And of course, the Speaker filed this session his Green Works bill, which is still over in the Senate. So hopefully that will come forward as well. And anytime the state spends money, that tells you where the policy priorities are. So those bills become even more important to us. All of these efforts have made Massachusetts a leader in this space. And in fact, it's led to some success. And if you could go to the next slide, what this shows you, it's just a simple slide that shows you that we have in fact decreased our greenhouse gas emissions over the past 10 years, primarily from switching from coal and oil power plants to natural gas powered plants. And that's led to about 20 million metric tons reduced out of our atmosphere, which is pretty tremendous, and it's a great beginning. And it's also been good for our economy because it's led to about 110,000 green jobs over that time frame. We've had a decade of experience with the GWSA, and it's shown us what's worked, it's shown us what hasn't worked, and it's shown us where the barriers are and where we need to make improvements. And I think what this tells us is we've had some initial success and we really need to keep going. And that's what this bill is about. If you could go to the next slide, please. So the initial part, as I said, of the GWSA was focused on that first 10 years, and it was focused on greening the grid. But for the next key pieces, it's really about more than just energy. There's multiple sectors that we should be thinking about and that we should be taking up at the same time, not sequentially, but at the same time. So think about Massachusetts. Transportation, as this slide shows you, is 43% of the emissions in the state. Buildings, if you look at buildings, it's 25%. And these are big numbers, and these are pieces that we also need to tackle. So it's both direct and indirect emissions. We need integrated strategies to start to tackle all of these things, and we need interim goals and benchmarks. In fact, we need a plan. If you could go to the next slide, please. And that's what the 2050 roadmap is. It's the critical updates to the Global Warming Solutions Act. It's based on the past 10 years of experience, and it's based on the things that we've learned that we need to go the whole distance to 2050. If you could go to the next slide, please. So what the bill does is really basically 5 things. It resets the 2050 target to net zero carbon emissions. It creates a comprehensive people-centric plan to reach the net zero. And what that really means is that it requires the administration to do a backcast analysis. And that is very simply the schedule of emission reductions and then identifying what the strategies are to achieve them over time. It requires strong 2030 and 2040 interim limits, and the way we approached it in this bill was to set a minimum level of emission reductions. So it must be at least 25%, at least 50%, at least 75%, and then a straight line. But that is to say is that if the planning just shows it and we can tackle it, we should do so more aggressively. It would also create transparency and accountability. There's a much more robust and aggressive reporting schedule, and this is really planning updates, but also both what we're doing and how we're doing, and then what are the next steps. And this is really meant to create that accountability out to the public, but as well as to the legislature, because the legislature needs to be a partner in this so that we're putting forward and seeing what the priorities are for legislation to make all of this happen. And then finally, it gives the administration new definitions and some tools that will help us will reach that goal. If you could go to the next slide, please. So far, thanks to all of your advocacy, we have gotten the bill, got an early hearing. Thank you, Chairman Pignatelli, and a slight rewrite to the bill. Thank you also to his fabulous staff. And it came out early in the session and is now pending in House Ways and Means. Thanks to your advocacy, the governor actually committed to net zero during his State of the Commonwealth address in January, which was a tremendous commitment. That was the first time we had really heard him say that. And why it matters is because the administration has begun to do some of the work around the backcast analysis, and we need them to be focused on the right goal, and we needed them to start seeking multiple pathways, which was exciting to hear him talk about that. Immediately on the heels of that, Speaker DeLeo also commented publicly his commitment to net zero target emissions, which we had been having that conversation, but it was really tremendous of the Speaker to speak right up and to say publicly on the heels of that. And then, of course, we saw that the Senate President also made that commitment when she released the Next Generation Climate Bills. And that those are the Senator Pacheco's bills on the Senate side that mirror parts of most of the 2050 roadmap. So really where we're at right now, if you could go to the last slide, is we're in House Ways and Means. We're having an active dialogue with the chairman and with the Speaker's office. And we are respectful of the moment in time that we are at with the pandemic. That is real. And it is an immediate public health crisis that we are working tremendously hard and devoting a lot of resources to. But now that the economy is starting to reopen and we are taking those steps to get back to normal, we are excited to have re-engaged with House Ways and Means in the Speaker's office to see if we can move this before the end of the session. I just wanted to thank everybody. Please, if you have questions about the bill, please follow the instructions and either contact Elders Climate Action or my office directly, and we are always happy to provide information. I'm always happy to speak about the bill. I think that this bill is one of the single most important pieces of legislation that we're going to put through this year. It's going to be transformative of the way that we live, and it's going to be transformative of our economy. And it's going to be the opportunity that we have to put ourselves on a path to a healthy decarbonized economy and to a healthy, safe future. And it's going to be good for our economy as we get there. And I'm excited. I'm excited to have done this. I'm excited to have your support. And I really look forward to working with all of you and with my colleagues to get it across the finish line. So with that, I'll conclude there and turn it back over to Seth. And I did just want to thank Chairman Pignatelli while I still have the floor, because I see he's joined us, and he was the first person who really sat with me, listened, and had faith in this bill. And so I just want to thank him for putting us on the path to conclusion.
Thank you so much, Representative Moschino. Before we pass the microphone and the camera to to Chairman Pignatelli, what I'd like to ask everybody to do is just to go down to the bottom of their Zoom screen, and where you see reactions, click there, and if you can, just give a round of applause for Representative Moschino by clicking on the clap. Thank you so much, Representative Moschino. And right now, I'm very pleased to introduce Chairman Pignatelli of the Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture Committee, who helped move this bill into House Ways and Means with his quick action. Thank you so much for being here, Chairman Pignatelli. And I would like to just say that Representative Kay Khan will be speaking next.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and thank you to everybody who's on this call and have organized this event. I got into the chair of the Environment Committee probably halfway through the previous session due to the sad and untimely death of a dear friend of mine, Gail Caridi, who chaired the committee for the 2 previous sessions. But I made a promise. Nothing frustrates me more as a legislator, especially in the second year of a legislative cycle. We normally are done by the end of July, and nothing drives me crazier as a legislator that we just run out of time. So I made a promise to myself and to the committee that we would tee the bills up early. We would get them heard early. We would get as much time on the other end of the 2-year cycle as possible. And that's where we're at right now. Clearly, and sadly, we're in the middle of a health pandemic crisis, which has really kind of thrown us off all the rails. I haven't been to Boston myself in 3 months. I don't want to go to Boston. We've been working remotely, doing formal sessions. But the one bill that Rep. Moschino talked about, her bill, and I was really inundated early on in the committee process about a 2050 roadmap bill. And a lot of advocates, especially out in my district, were talking about other bills about the 2050 roadmap. And I said to them, don't forget the Moschino bill. And they didn't know about it initially, but I said, don't forget the Moschino bill. So I really steered a lot of people towards that direction. And I made a promise to Joan, who's been such a champion of this and a very dear colleague for as long as she's been in the legislature, that we would tee it up early. It was one of the earlier hearings. I was getting some pressure from the Senate side of things to get out the Pacheco bills. There's some good bills there with Mark Pacheco. But I said, I don't want to let those bills out unless we get the Moschino bill out at the same time. So we heard it early. We had the testimony. My staff, and God rest his soul, Bob Libin, who was my staff counsel, who passed away a month ago unexpectedly. He really did an awful lot of work on this, and I have to tip my hat to him. And I think this bill will be a memory of Bob in many ways from my office's standpoint. But the Moschino bill is a solid bill. It's a good bill. It's in Ways and Means right now. And like I said, we're in the middle of a global health crisis, but we've been in the middle of an environmental crisis for a long time. And I think Joan's bill is really spot on. I personally think it's the best bill that is in the legislature right now. I actually had this very conversation with the speaker just last Friday. Everything's been kind of thrown off the rails, like I said. We normally would be done by the end of July. I truly believe that we would be called back into session sometime this fall. We don't even have a state budget at this point. So under normal circumstances, we'd all be scrambling for the last 2 weeks of this session to get this bill across the finish line. I still would love to see that happen on Joan's bill. But if it doesn't, I don't feel any of us should feel the collective, oh my God, we lost another time. So I think that the advocacy should continue, whether it's in the next 2 weeks or the next few months. I think there's a real unique and special opportunity to do something special for the environment without waiting until the next session starts again in January of 2021. So I told the speaker, I said it would be a missed opportunity if we don't do something this legislative session. As Rep. Moschino talked about, the speaker's Greenworks bill was done very early in the process. Sadly, the other chamber hasn't done anything with it, or they did their own version of things, and we haven't been able to get that resolved. So I know that Rep. Tom Golden has got his task force working on environmental climate bills. This has to be part of that conversation. So I would encourage you all to, after this call, I personally, this is my opinion, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time advocating with the Ways and Means or the members of the Ways and Means Committee. I would really put my energy towards Chairman Golden and the Speaker of the House. I think that's where these decisions are going to be made. And this collaborative group of people that you've helped organize here across the Commonwealth, I think speaks volumes about your commitment, your level of advocacy, and your collective ability to help us all craft a really solid bill that will be scientific-based evidence, given a state roadmap, literally and figuratively, to do this and tackle this once and for all. I think we could be really a leader in the country on some of these things. Naively, I always say, you know, when it comes to climate change and global warming and it's hard to do things state by state sometimes. We should have a national policy, but with the clear dysfunction that we have in Washington, I tip my hat and thank God every day that Joe Moschino is spearheading this effort. And I think I'm gonna follow her wherever she leads me. And this 2050 roadmap is a good bill, and I look forward to working with you guys to get it across the finish line. And I'd be happy and proud to lock arms with you in the governor's office when he signs this bill. But we're only going to be able to do that if we can collectively keep pushing it, keep expecting more. And if we don't do it this year, another 2-year cycle begins in January. And I tell you how much more damage could be done. And it's just a lost opportunity. So this is the time. Let's make it happen. And I look forward to working with you guys going forward. So I know some of you probably should have said that after we heard Rep. Moschino talk, that I should have just said ditto. After my intro just now, I will now say ditto to Rep. Moschino's 2050 roadmap.
Thank you so much, Chairman Pignatelli. And we do have a number of other representatives that are here and ready to speak, but I do want to shout out, there's, in addition to the reps that are here, there are many, many aides and staff to the reps that have also joined us, and we want to thank them for being here, and I'm sure that they'll pass on the good word and the urgency of our message to their representatives, and so thank you to all of them. We're going to hear from Kay Khan now, Representative Kay Khan.
I am really thrilled and honored to be here this morning, and actually I'd like to say ditto to Representative Pignatelli and Representative Moschino. I think that they are incredible champions of anything we need to do environmentally, and I really appreciate Rep. Moschino's work on this. She said she's been working on this for 2 years, and I believe it. She probably started working the minute she entered the legislature, and I'm so thrilled to be able to say a few words this morning, and also to my good friend, Representative Chairman Pignatelli, who obviously also believes strongly that we are in a very important place, a critical place, I think, in terms of moving forward. And the roadmap bill seems to be on the move and in a place where we can perhaps move it along. I also just want to thank my constituents who are environmental champions as well, and I want to thank them. Ellie Goldberg, who's the chairperson of Mothers Out Front, I think in Newton, and I'm from Newton. I represent the city of Newton, and I have to say the city of Newton is really in the forefront around the environment and the needs of what we need to do going forward environmentally. So I really want to thank my constituents for all of their sort of knowledge, and they are pushing me along all the time and helping me understand what we need to do. And I also just want to give a shout out to a member of my staff, Caitlin Rugo, who's here. I think she's on the call today, and she is also very much an environmentalist and is eager to continue to work with my constituents and to keep me abreast of what is happening and what we need to be doing. I just want to say a few words that I think that carbon neutrality by 2050 is within our reach, and it is our responsibility to our children. And I'm lucky enough to have 7 grandchildren, and I think about them every day and the importance of moving forward and to get this done. And the roadmap bill lays out a very big yet promising goal and path ahead. It is designed to accelerate our progress toward net zero emissions by pushing us to exploit, and explore all possible avenues toward reaching that goal. And the time is now. And I'm so happy that we're having this. And there's so many things, as we know, that are happening at the moment. The COVID-19 has really thrown us off. And but we need to really, this is all about that. It's all about everything that's happening, whether it's racial justice or COVID-19. The environment is really key to helping us move forward and have a an environment that really will work for everyone. And I think, keeping people healthy is really the important piece of all of this. And even with COVID-19, we're told every day to stay healthy, keep healthy, eat healthy, and live a healthy lifestyle. And that also is very helpful in terms of preventing other viruses and other problems that we may have. So I'm a healthcare person. I'm actually an advanced practice nurse. So I think about the environment. I think about healthcare. I think about all of the things that we're coping with right now. And I think that the environment is really one of the most key issues that will help us move ahead, move forward, protect our children, grandchildren, future generations. So I really want to just doubly thank Representative Machino and Representative Smitty-Pignatelli. I have a little amendment I'm going to pass on to both of you that I'd like you to take a look at. I've been working with Ann Berwick, who is a true environmentalist, and she's offered some thoughts that I would like to add. So I will send that information to you. But again, I just want to thank all of you for everybody who's on this call. I know it means a tremendous amount to all of you to move us forward. And the roadmap seems like a great piece of legislation that I'm happy to support and happy to reach out to both the speaker and to Representative Golden, who is the chairman of the TUE committee. So again, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here, and just feel like we need to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Khan. Those are the words we wanted to hear. We are now going to be introducing our next representative speaker, which is going to be Tammy Gouvet.
I'm so excited to be here with almost 260 other folks who care about climate as much as I do and as much as my constituents in the 14th Middlesex District do. Before I share just a couple thoughts on how important this particular piece of legislation is and climate changes to my constituents, I do want to give a shout out and a thank you again to my dear colleague Rep. Moschino, as well as Chair Pignatelli. Every single time I talk to Joan, we talk about the RoadMap bill. We talk about the advocacy that she's doing to work with the Speaker's office, to work with Chair of Ways and Means to really push this bill forward, and all the conversations that she's been having with so many of you who are on this call. So I just want to reiterate how much of a champion you really do have in dear Joan Moschino. And when I ran for office, I ran on a platform of climate change, healthcare, and transportation, all these things that really interact to impact our health and well-being. For those of you who don't know, I have a background in social work and public health. I'm working on a doctorate in public health. And in my public health world, I started off in environmental health policy. And so I'm not new to the scene when it comes to environmental health or climate change, and really have been excited to be able to put some of the work that I've done in my past life into the work that I'm doing in the legislature. But when I ran on a platform of climate change in the 14th Middlesex District, which includes Concord, Carlisle, Acton, and Chelmsford, I had no idea that I would be sort of walking side by side with so many wonderful champions such as Joan, and that we would have such a strong roadmap bill that I could just attach my name to and do some advocacy and work around. And so I've been trying to work behind the scenes and connecting with some of my connections, trying to get more physicians to come out and talk about the intersections of climate change and the impacts on their patients, particularly patients of color and low-income patients. We know that environmental justice is a huge concern, and that I believe is wrapped up in how we're thinking about this particular piece of legislation, because it has the component of accountability. And we know that behavior change is so incredibly difficult. And we're talking about very complicated, complex behavior changes as it relates to changing the ways that we think about our economy, how we get our energy, how we move about across the Commonwealth. And the roadmap is such a phenomenal piece of legislation because it takes into account all of those things and all those complexities in one piece of legislation, while bringing the right people to the table to be putting their heads together, to be thinking about, well, what does this look like for the future, and how do we get to where we want to be, and how do we achieve our climate goals, so we can make sure that we have an environment that is healthy and safe and enjoyable for everybody in the Commonwealth. I have an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old now. He just had a birthday. And I think a lot about the impacts of the decisions that we're making now, the decisions that people made before us about our environment. And you know, I think a lot about some of the children's stories that we've read while my children were young, and just realizing how much people don't always think about the impacts of the decisions that people before us made. And so we have a lot of legacies to undo. And I think we're at a critical moment when it comes to COVID-19, when we think about public health and the investments we've made or have not made, when we think about racial justice and social justice, we're at a real pivotal point to reflect on, wow, what are the decisions we've made? What are the places where people have power and who doesn't have power? And how do we right the ship so that we are holding the appropriate folks accountable for making different decisions and changes? And the roadmap does just that in so many ways. I'm so thrilled to see so many of my constituents here who I miss you all dearly. I miss Lana Zamaro, seeing you almost every week in Carlisle, talking about climate change policy, testifying with you and others up at the State House in support, not only of the roadmap bill, but in support of so many other bills that we care about and that are also important to, you know, enacting bold climate change. I am encouraged to hear Chairman Pignatelli's assessment of sort of where things are going and where our efforts and where your efforts really need to go, getting calls into Chair Golden, as well as the speaker, just to try to keep the pressure on. I am hearing some of my colleagues, particularly on the Senate side, saying that they are not hearing enough from climate activists, which was surprising to me because I hear from you all the time, every single week, almost every single day, because we know that even though COVID-19 is here and upon us, we know that we're fighting for racial justice, that the climate crisis is still something that we need to keep our eye on the ball on. So please continue to reach out to your elected officials, your rep and your senator, as well as getting letters and calls into Chair Golden. So I thank you all for being here. I thank you all for the continued work that you're doing, for the organizations who are here, and for the ways that you have expanded your efforts to other places across the state. Because when I first came into the building, one of the things that I was noticing is that a lot of our more conservative towns and cities didn't necessarily have climate action going on. And you have taken that ball and run with it in so many different places, both in my district, but also across the Commonwealth. So let's keep those efforts up. And thank you all for being here. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you up at the State House in the near future, but if not, at least virtually. So best of luck to everybody.
Thank you, Representative Gouveia. And I'd like to introduce now Representative Adrian Madaro. Representative Adrian Madaro is the author of a very important bill, which we see as a perfect complement to the roadmap bill. It's an environmental justice bill. And this is one of the ways, as Representative Gouveia has suggested, that we've expanded our efforts not only across the state, but reaching out to all sorts of other organizations that are deeply concerned with social justice and environmental justice. Representative Madaro.
Thank you, Seth. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Adrian Madaro. I'm the state representative for the 1st Suffolk District, which covers East Boston. It's really great to be with you all, and I'm glad that we can come together today to discuss really critical issues that impact our daily lives and all of our communities. In particular, I want to thank our hosts, Elder Climate Action, all of the advocates who've joined us on the Zoom, including my constituent and one of the founders of the East Boston chapter of Mothers Out Front, and a very talented musician, as you will soon hear, Sonia Tenglebad. And of course, I want to thank my wonderful colleague, Rep. Moschino, who is the champion of the RoadMap 2050 bill. There is no doubt that environmental and climate change issues affect us all. These are not problems that stop at the border of any legislative district or any community. However, it's important to recognize that while these issues affect all of us, they do impact some communities more than others. Usually, they affect low-income, immigrant, and communities of colors most. We have a duty to address the disparities that lead to disproportionate burdens on these communities. This is environmental justice, or EJ for short. The fossil fuels that affect climate change worldwide are burned disproportionately in certain communities. My district is one of them. Again, I represent East Boston, one of the state's biggest environmental justice communities. East Boston is a low-income, working-class community, primarily comprised of immigrants, mostly Latinx. Sadly, we have some of the heaviest environmental burdens in Massachusetts. Eastie is home to Logan Airport, hosting the vast majority of regional air traffic for our state. We're home to a significant amount of the state's jet fuel and heating fuel brought up the Chelsea Creek to big oil tanks along our riverfront. And cutting through the center of our community is Route 1A, the preferred daily route for thousands of North Shore commuters, and of course, all of the traffic going to and from the airport. Given the fact that Boston has been the most congested city in America for 2 years in a row, it often feels like East Boston is ground zero for that traffic. All of these are burning carbon into the atmosphere: jet fuels, gasoline, heating oil. But who is breathing in these emissions, these fumes, this particulate matter? Well, it goes into the lungs of folks in East Boston, black and brown lungs mostly, low-income workers, immigrants. And because of this, we experience elevated rates of asthma and COPD, with the highest rates in Boston, as well as other pulmonary disorders. Our children grow up breathing these emissions day in and day out. And it's the same in neighboring communities like Chelsea and Revere, which are also EJ communities. Our planet is now facing a reckoning after decades of burning fossil fuels. But the burden of these fumes has been borne by EJ communities since day one. The EJ bill I filed with Reps Miranda and Dubois and Senators Eldridge and DiDomenico seeks to address these disparities. It codifies the definition of environmental justice and environmental justice communities into law for the first time in Massachusetts history. It creates a higher threshold for review of new projects that could increase environmental burdens on a community, and mandates an improved community process to make sure that residents are aware and that their concerns are heard. It ensures that the burdens on EJ communities are addressed and fixed. It's the first step in a long overdue process to ensure environmental equity. I'm proud that this bill has been endorsed by a host of environmental organizations alongside the 2050 RoadMap bill, both of which, by the way, were reported out favorably from committee. And I look forward to seeing both bills pass the legislature and get signed into law. And let's not forget, climate change affects EJ communities too, because EJ communities are often some of the most vulnerable to climate change and sea level rise, with some of the fewest protections. In East Boston, we're surrounded by water right on the coast. In the past few years, we've seen more flooding than ever before. The newest, more expensive buildings on the waterfront have all been built with infrastructure to protect themselves from this flooding. But for the rest of the community, all we can do is make sure that we slow the rise of sea levels as quickly as possible. I know I'm preaching to the choir with this group, but climate change won't wait. The science tells us we need to act now. We need to set more aggressive emission standards, and Massachusetts is capable of meeting these goals. We need the 2050 RoadMap bill. The 2050 RoadMap bill is an environmental justice bill. And again, I'm grateful to Rep Moschino and all the advocates for their hard work on these issues. And I also want to thank Chair Smitty Pignatelli for his leadership and commitment to the environment, and specifically to environmental justice. The RoadMap 2050 bill protects our most vulnerable communities from the effects of climate change they will disproportionately experience. Our communities need this legislation, and I'm proud to join you all to call for these bills in being passed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Representative Maduro. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. We're going to ask people to, when they contact their legislators, also make sure to let them know about our support for the environmental justice bill. And our next speaker is going to be Jay Livingstone. Representative Livingstone is here, I believe, and following him will be Representative Sicola.
Thank you. And thank you, Rep. Maduro and Rep. Moschino, for your leadership on these great issues. As they both said, and as all the speakers have said so far, this is a climate crisis, and we need action now. And these are two bills, and I think they work great together with Jones having a roadmap for what happens in the next 30 years in Massachusetts, and Adrian's making sure that communities aren't disproportionately negatively impacted by that. So I'm proud to support both of them and continue to advocate for both of them. It's great that Chair Pignatelli reported about, I think they reported both of them out, and they're both in Ways and Means. And I'm also excited this term that the speaker has made this such a priority. You know, the speaker never files legislation or does it once a year, once a term. In this term, he started off by filing his Greenworks bill, which unfortunately is still pending in the Senate, as the first act that he wanted to take this term. And it's in both, and that would have been is very consistent with and supportive of both of these bills that we're talking about today. And in addition to that, you know, we are getting into a bandwidth issue of how much we can take on in the time remaining, and if it's going to be continued, what exactly that would look like. But the speaker consistently has said that whenever he's talked about what additional non-COVID related things we're going to do, he's consistently said addressing the climate crisis. And that doesn't just happen. I mean, I think this, in my conversation with speakers and other leadership, I think they understand the climate crisis as well as us. But getting to the top of the heap and getting our issues that are important to us to be the ones that rise to the top takes all of us working together. And it's, you know, we have great champions in Rep. Madero and Rep. Messino leading this effort, and I'm glad to support it. And I'm so glad to see all of you so interested in this issue and continuing to advocate for it. And so thank you, and I'll continue to do my part, but this is, getting legislation passed is always a team effort. And so I'm so proud to be part of this team and see the strength of it as we continue to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Livingstone. I want to just take a second to acknowledge again that there are many representatives' aides who are here participating in the meeting, and want to thank them for being here and for passing along the message that Representative Khan so articulately put. I also want to acknowledge right now that there is another representative who had asked to speak, but we are running so late. I just want to give him a shout out. This is Representative Dave Rogers. Thank you, Representative Rogers, for being here and for your support of the bill. On the agenda right now is Representative Michelle Sicolo.
Good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here and so impressed to see how many advocates have joined us today. I'm really here just because I want to support Rep. Moschino's amazing bill. This is an absolutely critical piece of legislation that we have to pass this session. As our facilitator just mentioned, we are running over time, so I'm going to be very brief. I represent the 15th Middlesex District, which includes Lexington and parts of Woburn. My district cares deeply about the environment. I would say it's probably our #1 priority and the thing I hear the most about from my constituents. We're a community that's already passed a net zero plan, and because we have a plan, we are taking regular and consistent action steps locally to move forward on our environmental goals. And I think it's just critical. It's not enough to have aspirational goals. Without a plan, we cannot get there. Folks who know me and know that a little bit about my career know that I've been involved in planning for a very long time with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. I was a former president of MAPC and a municipal official for 25 years, including a member of the select board in Lexington. And throughout my professional career, I worked a lot in transportation and in public health. And the intersection of these two issues, I think, is such a clear indication of why we need this particular bill. It's no surprise to folks, and it's been sad and tragic, but COVID-19 has hurt our environmental justice communities far more, and residents, Black and brown residents, have fared far worse in this pandemic. And a large reason of that is because of air quality issues, particulate matter, which comes from the transportation sector. Those slides that Joan showed us earlier really indicated how important it is for us to get our arms around what we need to do to transform the transportation system. And clearly, we have not been paying enough attention to it, and it's having a disparate impact on our low-income communities, and that's just not acceptable. So I've been a supporter of this bill since day one. I've been a co-sponsor, signed on very early, also to the environmental justice bill, thank you, Rep. Modero, for that bill as well. I am a member of the Environmental Committee, so it's great to see Chairman Pignatelli here, and I'm also a member of the Public Health Committee, and this bill in particular has been a regular priority of mine. What I'm doing to try to advance the bill is making sure that in all my interactions with leadership, it is one of my top 10 bills that I want to see us push across the finish line this session. And toward that end, I've been sending letters and emails to leadership, making phone calls, and actually asking them to look at extending the session. I don't, I'm fully in favor of us coming back after the election, after the primary, staying late into August, whatever it is that we need to do to make sure that we get this across the finish line. So again, I want to thank all the organizers, all the advocates. Your role is critical. We need your partnership. The energy you put behind these bills and legislation like this is what makes the difference. And I'm just really pleased to be here and looking forward to working with you all to get this done this session. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Sokol. I just want to give a shout out to Representative Blay, who's here now and has joined the meeting. Unfortunately, like I said, we're running late, so we're not going to be able to turn the microphone over to her. But right now we are inviting Brookline State Rep Tommy Vitolo to add a few words.
As you mentioned, I'm Representative Tommy Vitolo from Brookline. This is my first term as a state rep. Prior to working as a state rep, my job was to help persuade governments and commissioners to retire coal-fired power plants. And in fact, I've personally led teams that have retired 19 coal-fired units around the country. So this is my jam. This is my background and my experience. In April of 2020, CO2 in the environment was about 413 parts per million. We needed to be at 350, and we're going in the wrong direction, and that's because we don't have a plan. These things don't turn around on their own. We get an occasional win here or there by chance, but the fact of the matter is good policy that looks years and tens of years in the future is what gets it done. And what makes the roadmap such a great bill is it doesn't just say, yeah, 2050. It says, no, we need intermediate steps so that we can continue to focus on the things we can control now and not push off to another session, another decade, another generation. And by the way, that's one of the things that I love about Elders for Climate Action is you're not pushing it off. You're saying, we own this, we're here now, we're gonna get it done now. I have no doubt that we're gonna get Rep. Moschino's bill done. I'm hoping for now. I'm hoping for like Friday. Let's do it. But the sooner the better. And I do want to quickly acknowledge that, as Rep. Livingstone said, it's a team. But the team grows strong because of mentorship. And on this call today, Chair Pignatelli, Chair Khan, Chair Rogers, Chair Honan, Vice Chair Livingstone, Vice Chair Madero, Vice Chair Garbali, and Rep. Joan Moschino have all mentored me in the last 18 months on how to be a better rep. And the way that we are going to be successful is by making sure that the leaders are in a position to lead and continue to help teach newer reps so that our team grows and becomes more and more effective. And so thank you to the folks I mentioned for putting your arm around me, for saying, hey, I know you didn't mean to say it quite like that, but maybe next time try it this way, or did you think about doing this instead? We've all got to grow. We've all got to get better at our jobs. And the folks I've mentioned have personally pulled me aside and helped me become a better rep. And so I want to celebrate them for doing that and point out how important that is. But we've got more to the agenda, so let's get to the rest of it.
Thank you, Representative Vitolo. We've been hearing a lot of speeches. We could hear many more. We still would like to hear from the main sponsors, some of the main sponsors of this rally. But before we do, and to give everybody a nice little break, we are going to introduce a singer. Her name is Sonia Tengblad. She's a member of Mothers Out Front, and she's going to lead us in a song. We're all going to stay on mute. Sonia, if we want to sing along, I think we'll be able to pick up the words pretty quickly. It's very liberating and fun to sing out loud when nobody can hear you. So Sonia, please lead us.
Absolutely. Sing and clap along. This is a song by the Okie Dokie Brothers about hope in the midst of an impending storm, and we have lots to hope for. So if you can clap along with me. There's a hard rain a-coming. I can feel it in my bones. There's a hard rain a-coming. I can feel it in my bones. There's a hard rain a-coming. I can feel it in my bones. In my bones, in my bones, in my bones, in my bones, in my bones. There's a strong wind a-coming. I can feel it in my bones. There's a strong wind a-coming. I can feel it in my bones. There's a strong wind a-coming. I can feel it in my bones. In my bones, in my bones, in my bones, in my bones, in my bones. There's a big flood a-coming. I can feel it in my bones. There's a big flood a-coming. I can feel it in my bones. There's a big flood a-coming. I can feel it in my bones, 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 in my bones. There's hope for better weather. I can feel it in my bones. There's hope for better weather. I can feel it in my bones. There's hope for better weather. I can feel it in my bones. In my bones, in my bones, in my bones, in my bones, in my bones. One more time. In my bones, in my bones, in my bones, in my bones, in my bones. Let's do this.
If everybody can just give a round of reaction applause. Thank you so much to Sonia. And Sonia, we may ask you to reprise that song as we leave the meeting. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful break. A couple other acknowledgements. I just want to say that there are a couple of other reps whose aides are here who express regrets about them not being able to be here themselves. Representative Denise Garlics, who's vice chair of the House Ways and Means, is here. Her rep Isabel Lane. Dmitry Gridnev, who's Chairman Balzer's aide, is here. So thank you for being here and for your support. Right now, we're gonna try to wrap this up quickly since we're close to 11. I'm gonna ask for the members of the various organizations that have been some of the main sponsors of this bill. Again, there are about 20 and the list is available on the agenda, but we have just a couple of minutes now for a few more speakers. And if Mark Dyden is here from Diane from 350 Mass, Mark.
So I'm following the singer, huh? Okay, I think this is a tremendous effort. 350 Mass strongly supports the RoadMap bill. We'd like to see some improvements to it, but we strongly support it, and we strongly support the EJ bill. And having them linked together, as was done here, I think is spectacular, and we're very enthusiastic about this. We're going to be, we need a firm foundation, and we need in law what people have promised in public, that the state is going to go to zero net by 2050. That's the bedrock on which any policy around climate change can be done. I think we need also to make sure that the plans that are developed under the bill have a just transition for the people who are now working in the fossil fuel industry, that the money that's raised, if the state goes with any of the market-based solutions that are outlined in the bill, is spent on the communities and on the people who are most hard hit, the frontline communities. We also think that we need to have a clear mandate that the deadlines in this bill are binding on the regulatory agencies that the state has. We don't want to be in court trying to convince the DPU in 2 years that we really meant 2030 and that they shouldn't be approving a facility that's going to last beyond that and emitting fuels. Those are very important. And the last little thing I'd suggest is right now the final report is set for December of 2022. And without getting too political, wouldn't it be nice to know what the final report is before we vote for the next governor? a minor change, just a date, I think would be a big help. Anyway, but again, we're strongly in favor of this bill. We're strongly in favor of linking with, in parallel with EJ, and we enthusiastically endorse this effort.
Thank you so much, Mark. Few words now from Bethany Quokka, who is here from Conservation Law Foundation.
Hi, everyone. So I cover clean energy and climate change at CLF, and I'm really excited to talk about this bill. We've been working on these issues for many years, and this bill represents so much hard work from so many people at CLF and beyond. So again, thank you to Rep. Moschino and really all the reps in the House who have pushed us forward on this, as well as all the organizers who helped put this together. So I'll try to keep this brief. When I'm talking to friends and family about why we need the 2050 RoadMap bill, here's what I like to tell them. We're on track to experience catastrophic impacts from climate change. We already know what these look like too: blistering heat waves, severe storms and flooding, a rise in tick-borne illnesses. These impacts hurt our health, hurt our wallets, and as has been mentioned, don't affect all of us equally. So we need a plan, one that covers everything from energy to buildings to the cars and trucks we drive every day. And ideally, one that allows for new technology and, changes that we know will come. So that's where the 2050 RoadMap bill comes in. It's super importantly a people-centered approach. It ensures we know where the disparities are so we can adjust our plans accordingly. And it's comprehensive. It covers different sectors of the economy and will bring good jobs in the renewable energy sector. And it holds our state agencies accountable to the people of Massachusetts. So this means we'll see real progress. Proactively putting our state on a path to reach zero climate damaging emissions means we'll see more clean, affordable energy powering our homes and businesses, more clean cars on the road, clean public transit options, and more clean air for everyone to enjoy. So by passing this bill, we commit to following the latest science and to supporting low and moderate income families while we transform our economy. We've been on the forefront of this issue for years, and we must keep making progress. There is no time to wait. We need to pass this bill this session. So thank you to everyone who's put so much work into getting this legislation passed, and let's keep it up.
Thank you so much, Bethany. I'm going to ask the remaining speakers from the organizations to really keep their remarks very brief since we're running over time now. We had hoped to end by now. Representing my organization, Elders Climate Action, is BJ Batts.
Hello, I'm BJ Batts from Elders Climate Action. 3 years ago, I was tutoring men in the Massachusetts prisons in Concord at the Rotary. While I was there, I began to learn about global warming. And one day, it dawned on me that things are so dire that the men who come from the Cape, when they get out, there may be no Cape for them to go home to. Fast forward, I, as well as ECA, now support the RoadMap bill, a bill that is both incredibly practical as well as visionary. It's visionary because in contrast to most climate bills, it does not tackle greenhouse gas problems one at a time. Rather, it uses state-of-the-art modeling called backcasting to look at not only all the sources of greenhouse gas pollution here in Massachusetts, but also its social, health, and environmental justice concerns in its models as well. Climate change is incredibly complex, and backcasting handles that complexity. However, this bill is also very practical. Doesn't it make sense if we are headed into unknown territory, in this case, to get to net zero by 2050, to map out how we're going to get there even before we start? Backcasting does just that. It's like a GPS system. It will produce several options for us of how to get to net zero by 2050 or earlier without the need to construct a new bridge or roads to support our journey. At that point, we have a choice about what our net zero future will look like. This decision is of vital importance, not only for ourselves, our children, our grandchildren, but also for my friends back in Concord at MCI Concord. When they are allowed to go home, I hope the Cape is still there to welcome them. Thank you for your support of the RoadMap.
Thank you so much, BJ. With us running over time, I'm really going to ask the remaining speakers from League of Women Voters, that's Lana Samaro, Ellie Goldberg from Others Out Front, and John Rogers from Union of Concerned Scientists to express briefly their support for the bill and just say a couple of words so that we can get you all out of here.
Okay, Lana Zamaro here from the League, and You've heard all the good reasons why this bill is such a great bill. It's one of the best I've seen in 12 years of advocacy at the State House. So I'm going to net it out. None of us would build a house without a plan. We cannot expect to build a just, non-polluting, and livable future that works for all of us without one. We need a plan. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Lona. Ellie from Mothers Out Front.
Hi, I'm from Mothers Out Front in Newton, and to make it really brief, I just want to say that today no one can claim we can't visualize the climate crisis or the damage that and severe health and economic horribles caused by pollution and waste. And I just say that we know that the fossil fuel industry has deliberately cheated, lied, bamboozled, defrauded, and polluted our communities. They circumvent regulations that protect climate, air, and water. They lobby to weaken health and safety standards, and they fight to usurp our right to know and our right to be safe. And we can no longer afford the subsidies and giveaways to the carbon-based energy interests that are leading us to climate disaster. So we need legislation that explicitly meets the needs of all communities and households, especially communities of color and low wealth that are the most harmed and are the least at the table in climate policy development. So we champion the RoadMap bill because it aligns with the solutions, it aligns with the science, and with true accountability from our government. And we call for swift, just climate transition away from dirty fossil fuels and build the future we really envision based on clean, safe renewables. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellie. And last but not least, from some of the major sponsors, reminding everybody that there are many, many other sponsoring organizations. We just did not have enough time to fit them all in here for speeches. We have John Rogers from the Union of Concerned Scientists. Thank you, John.
Great, and thank you all for being here. UCS works at the intersection of science and policy, and this bill really works in both those regards. The science is clear that this is the type of ambition we need. The political landscape is such that it's clear that this is the type of leadership we need to see from Beacon Hill right now for all the reasons you've heard from so many of the sponsors. You know, the 2050 target, the interim targets that make it clear that help us get there in a productive manner, the focus on low and moderate income households and environmental justice communities. So a strong endorsement from the Union of Concerned Scientists for both this bill and the environmental justice bill that Rep. Maduro has been such a strong champion of. And thank you so much to all of you for working to make this a reality.
Thank you so much, John. And your work has been so important to really keeping us on track. I want to end this meeting by thanking everybody for being here. I'm inviting people to stay on for another few minutes. If you want some help in actually taking action right after this meeting, we're going to convert to a little action our component here. But as we leave the meeting, if we can all not just applaud Representative Moschino and all the other reps who were here and their aides once again in the reaction, but I want everybody also to give themselves a pat on the back. We have helped to get all of us, and all of our organizations have helped get us to this point. As everybody has said, we just need a little final push. We're going to stay on here and encourage you to write emails to your legislators and to call your legislators and make sure that they are getting the word to Representative Golden, to Chairman Golden, and to House Speaker DeLeo that this is urgent. Thank you so much for your attendance. Thank you again to all the reps that have been here. And the many that I didn't mention, I apologize, but this has been a great rally, and forward.